Welcome to the Impeach 47 podcast. In our reporting today, we are setting out to uncover the reality hiding behind the Kremlin's walls.
Right.
And we are going to start with a number for you, 2.
Yeah.
That is the stark, verified statistic we need to put on the table right at the top of this deep dive. Vladimir Putin has made only 2 confirmed public appearances in 2026.
Which is, it's staggering.
It is. To put that in perspective, he had 17 external activities by this time the previous year.
Right.
So we are looking at a drastic plummet. We're talking about a head of state who has essentially vanished from the public eye.
Yeah, it is a stunning visual abscess.
Yeah.
And, it speaks volumes about the current state of the Russian presidency. When a leader retreats to that degree, it fundamentally alters the mechanics of the state. You can't just hide a president and expect the gears of government to keep turning the same way.
Right, because the core reality our reporting has uncovered is that Putin hasn't just, reduced his schedule.
Yeah.
He has physically retreated. He's withdrawn from public life into this network of hardened underground bunkers in southern Russia, specifically down in the Krasnodar region.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to wrap my head around the logistics of this.
Sure.
How does a head of state vanish from public life while still pretending to run a massive country at war? Are we talking about a few staged photos, or is this a full-blown production?
Oh, it's an industrial scale production.
Really?
Yeah. The Kremlin isn't just ignoring his absence.
Yeah.
They're actively engineering a facade of normalcy.
It's okay.
They want the Russian public and the world to believe he is sitting at his desk in Moscow, receiving reports and making decisions in broad daylight.
Right.
And to pull that off, state media is broadcasting recycled, pre-recorded footage of Putin in his standard office environments.
Wait, recycled footage?
Yeah, they've essentially built replica sets.
You're kidding.
No, the desk in the Krasnodar bunker matches the desk in Moscow down to the wood grain and the placement of the pens.
Wait, so if I turn on Russian state TV right now, I might see him conducting a briefing, but it's basically a ghost broadcast?
Precisely.
Wow.
They manipulate the metadata, they sync the clocks on the wall, they curate the lighting to look like a brisk Moscow morning.
When he's actually hundreds of feet underground.
Right down in the south. They carefully drop these pre-recorded clips into the news cycle to just project a veneer of routine.
So is this a new tactic? Because when I think about authoritarian leaders hiding underground and relying on canned broadcasts, my mind goes to regimes that are in a state of terminal panic.
Yes, absolutely.
Confident wartime commanders who think they are winning, they usually visit the front lines.
They want to be seen rallying the troops.
Right. They are highly visible. So what does this elaborate theatrical retreat signal about the Kremlin's internal stability right now?
Well, it signals profound fragility.
Okay.
To maintain an illusion of this magnitude, you need absolute control over the physical environment. But more importantly, you need total control over the people who have access to that environment.
Because of leaks.
Well, yes, precisely. You just can't keep a lid on a secret this massive if your staff is leaking data.
That makes sense.
You cannot secure a bunker if you harbor even a shred of doubt about the loyalty of every single individual allowed inside. So the paranoia, which used to be directed outward at the West, has now turned violently inward.
So imagine you are one of his personal cooks, or, a photographer, or a bodyguard.
Yeah.
Our reporting details the sweeping new protocols forced upon this daily operational staff, and the psychological toll of just going to work must be immense.
It's unbelievable.
Right, because we aren't just talking about high-level military advisors signing non-disclosure agreements.
No.
We are talking about the staff being entirely barred from using public transport.
Yes.
And critically, they are completely banned from using mobile phones or internet-connected devices anywhere near him.
And that security net doesn't stop at the perimeter of the bunker either.
What do you mean?
The apparatus has effectively extended the bunker into the private lives of the staff.
Oh, wow.
Surveillance systems have now been installed inside the personal homes of his staff members.
Wait, they're actual homes?
Yes. Their private living rooms are monitored.
That is intense.
And on top of that, Federal Protective Service agents, the FSO, they are conducting massive, continuous sweeps.
Okay.
They are using specialized dog units, thoroughly securing areas around his former residences, and they have even stationed agents along the Moscow River.
Okay, let's talk about those dogs in the river for a second, because that feels incredibly intense.
Yeah.
What are they actually looking for with the dogs?
Well, they aren't just bomb-sniffing dogs.
Okay.
They are deploying dogs trained to detect the chemical signatures of lithium-ion batteries.
Right. They can sniff out batteries.
Yeah, and hidden electronics. They're sweeping for unauthorized SIM cards or listening devices.
Oh.
And as for the Moscow River, the FSO maintains heavy boat patrols near his traditional seats of power to prevent acoustic or electronic surveillance boats from getting close.
Even though he isn't there.
Right. They have to maintain the physical security perimeter as if he is, just to keep the ruse alive.
I have to push back on the logistics of all this, though.
Okay, go ahead.
So you're trying to orchestrate a massive 21st century ground war,
Yeah.
but your generals have to basically send you a carrier pigeon to give you a battlefield update because you're terrified of an iPhone.
Right, it sounds absurd.
I mean, if you strip a modern leader's staff of internet access and cell phones, you create an immense bottleneck.
You do.
How can a leader actually micromanage an invasion when the flow of real-time intelligence is intentionally crippled?
Well, the Kremlin is making a calculated trade-off.
Okay.
They are prioritizing survival over efficiency.
Right.
They are entirely willing to accept the friction and the delays because the alternative, the vulnerability of modern communication, is deemed a guaranteed death sentence.
A death sentence.
Yes. The extreme FSO sweeps, the agents on the river, the total communication blackouts, none of this is security theater for the sake of looking tough.
Right.
It is a direct response to a specific two-pronged threat vector that the regime is deeply terrified of.
Okay, so they are accepting this massive communication bottleneck,
Yeah.
but you don't cripple your own war machine unless the alternative is catastrophic.
Precisely.
What are they seeing in the skies or in their own hallways that justifies blinding themselves like this? Let's take the external threat first.
Sure.
The Ukrainian drone program. We have seen time and time again that Ukrainian forces possess the capability to strike deep into Russian territory.
Yes, the drones have proven they can bypass certain air defense systems
Right.
and hit high-value targets hundreds of miles inside Russia.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. Max Seddon of the Financial Times noted this in his reporting, pointing out that Russia has sharply tightened security around Putin as fears rise of an assassination attempt involving drones. So he spends more time underground, micromanaging the invasion, and growing incredibly detached from civilian affairs.
But wait, I'm trying to connect this. How does an external drone threat necessitate banning a cook's cell phone?
Okay, think about how a modern drone works.
Okay.
It doesn't just fly blind over a map. It needs a real-time digital beacon to find a high-value target.
Right.
A drone needs coordinates, so a bodyguard checking a sports score on a smartphone that's pinging a cell tower.
Oh, I see.
In modern warfare, that ping isn't just data. It is a glowing red X painted on the roof of the bunker for a Ukrainian strike.
That is a terrifying thought for anyone in that compound.
Absolutely.
A targeting beacon in the pocket of a bodyguard or a general.
And that is the crucial link between the external drone threat and the internal purges.
How so?
The Kremlin's ultimate nightmare is that an elite political or military insider could use their proximity to intentionally guide a strike. If you ban all internet-connected devices, and if you heavily surveil your staff, you are actively trying to blind any potential insider who might want to transmit those coordinates.
So they assume the threat is already inside the perimeter.
Absolutely assume that.
And when we look at who is inside the perimeter, the internal threat takes on a very specific face.
Yes, it does.
Our reporting highlights intelligence assessments that specifically flag former Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu as a massive coup risk.
Right.
And for anyone listening, you have to understand, Shoigu is not some fringe character or a rogue outsider.
Not at all.
He is deeply embedded in the state apparatus and retains significant lingering influence within the military high command.
We really need to unpack Shoigu's influence because you cannot understand this bunker retreat without looking at the shadow of 2023.
Right.
The Kremlin has never fully neutralized the fractures within the military that were exposed during Yevgeny Prigozhin's mutiny.
That was the moment the Wagner Group literally marched toward Moscow, right?
It won. That event shattered the illusion of Putin's absolute control.
Completely.
It showed the entire Russian military apparatus that a mechanized march on the capital was physically and mechanically possible.
Right. They basically drove right up the highway.
Yeah. Prigozhin is gone, But these structural weaknesses and the factions within the armed forces remain.
Mm-hmm.
During that mutiny, the regular army largely stood down. They didn't rush to the president's defense.
Which is very telling.
That was a glaring wake-up call for the Kremlin. The army is loyal to the army.
And Shoigu represents that institutional army power.
He does.
He has his own network of loyalists that operates distinctly from Putin's personal FSO security detail.
He represents a parallel node of power.
Right.
When you have a military that has been ground down by years of brutal attritional warfare, the top brass starts looking for someone to blame.
Sure.
And the Kremlin knows that historically, when an army starts losing, the generals often turn their sights on the palace.
But surely Shoigu has his own intelligence network.
Without a doubt.
If the military really wanted to breach this bunker, couldn't they? I mean, does a concrete door actually stop a military coup if the regular army has bunker busters and armored divisions?
Well,
Is the bunker in Krasnodar primarily designed to protect Putin from the explosive blast of a drone? Or is it actually a mechanism to physically isolate him from his own general?
it is the latter.
Really?
A fortified underground facility keeps an explosive blast out, yes. But mechanically, it dictates who can physically enter the room.
Oh, I see.
It creates an architectural choke point.
Right.
Think about a ceremonial office in the heart of Moscow. It has dozens of entry points, public squares, sweeping corridors, and overlapping jurisdictions of security.
Lots of vulnerabilities.
Right. If a faction of the military decides to move, Moscow is incredibly vulnerable to a coordinated strike.
Because there are too many variables to control in a massive capital city.
Exactly. Well, yes, spot on. A bunker in Krasnodar strips all of that away.
Okay.
It mechanically limits access to a single elevator shaft or a single blast door controlled entirely by the FSO.
Wow.
It effectively locks the regular military out of the room where decisions are made. The architecture of his daily life is now completely dictated by defense against his own military elite.
Which brings us to the strategic cost of this isolation.
Yeah.
What does this all mean for the war effort? We are 3 years into a war that the Kremlin originally stated would last mere days.
Right.
The Russian economy is heavily deformed by global sanctions. The military has suffered massive attrition.
Yeah.
This retreat to the bunker isn't an incidental pause or a brief security precaution.
No, not at all.
It is a permanent structural shift.
It is the new operational reality of the Russian state.
Right.
The regime has stopped trusting itself.
Wow.
When a government reaches a point where it must assume its own defense minister might launch a coup and its own staff might broadcast targeting coordinates, the entire apparatus of state freezes.
But, it seems like tightening security protocols might be a sign of a regime trying to consolidate power.
Well, consolidating power looks like purging enemies and standing victorious in the public square.
Right, showing strength.
Yeah. What we are seeing is a regime operating purely from fear.
Okay.
And bunker governance has severe real-world consequences for battlefield command.
Oh, so.
When a leader physically isolates themselves behind FSO blast doors, they inherently receive heavily filtered information.
Let's talk about how that filtering actually works.
Sure.
Because if I am an intelligence officer walking down into that bunker, I know my living room is bugged.
Yeah.
I know dogs just sniffed my car.
Right.
And I know my boss thinks I might be a traitor.
Yeah, when you isolate yourself this deeply, information flow operates like a submarine periscope that's been painted over by your own crew.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The people allowed into the bunker are terrified. They are heavily surveilled. They know that delivering bad news about a battlefield defeat could be fatal to their careers or their freedom. So by the time a frontline report makes its way down that elevator shaft, it has been heavily sanitized. It reads like a victory parade.
So it becomes a closed loop of artificial optimism.
Absolutely.
The messenger is already viewed with suspicion, so bringing news of a Ukrainian advance makes them a target.
And as a result, the leader makes much slower decisions because they are operating on delayed, curated data.
Right.
You cannot effectively manage a grinding attritional war across thousands of miles of front line when your only view of the conflict is a heavily redacted briefing paper handed to you in a subterranean room by a terrified aide.
It's
You
impossible.
completely lose touch with the reality on the ground.
Which means strategic miscalculations aren't just possible, they become inevitable.
Yes.
If you are only hearing what an isolated staff wants to tell you, you are going to misjudge your enemy's strength, you are going to misjudge your own military's capabilities,
All right.
and you are going to make disastrous choices. We are watching the structural decay of decision-making happening in real time.
And that decay feeds the paranoia.
How does that loop work?
Well, when the bad decisions lead to further battlefield failures, the isolated leader doesn't blame his own strategy.
Of course not.
He assumes sabotage. He assumes disloyalty within the ranks.
Right.
So what happens? The security tightens even further.
The FSO sweeps become more frequent?
Yes. The staff is subjected to even harsher surveillance. The bunker doors close a little tighter. It is a vicious, self-reinforcing cycle of isolation.
It is a closed-loop system of fear.
Yeah.
And if you are listening to this and wondering how sustainable this is, you have to consider the human element of this apparatus.
Definitely.
The individuals maintaining this system, the guards, the remaining staff, the television producers faking the broadcasts, they are fully aware of the discrepancy.
Oh, they know.
Right. They see the confident clips on state television,
Yeah.
and they know the grim reality of a subterranean command center.
Yeah.
That cognitive dissonance breeds instability at every single level of the chain of command.
What is truly fascinating here is how this mirrors the historical life cycle of autocratic regimes.
Really?
There is always a tipping point where the security apparatus built to protect the leader becomes the very mechanism that severs the leader from reality.
Wow.
The Kremlin is currently attempting to balance a massive, aggressive external war in Ukraine with a hyper-defensive, paranoid internal posture.
Right.
Those two operational states are fundamentally incompatible in the long term.
Yeah, they clash.
You cannot project strength and conquer territory abroad while barricading yourself against your own military elite at home.
Right. In our reporting today, we laid out the stark reality of those two public appearances.
Yeah.
We mapped the bunker state in Krasnodar and the extreme measures taken to fake a Moscow presence.
Right.
We outlined the twin threats of Ukrainian drones and internal military factions led by figures like Shoigu.
Mm-hmm.
And we examined how painting over the periscope cripples Russian strategic command.
Yeah,
But all of this points toward a deeply unstable horizon.
it does. And the final lingering question we have to pose, so a question directly emerging from our reporting, is this. Will the intense paranoia and the all-consuming fear that locked Vladimir Putin underground ultimately accelerate the very internal fracture and regime collapse that forced him there in the first place?
Wow.
When your defenses blind you to reality, the walls you build to keep the threats out might be the very things that bury you.
That is the structural paradox of the bunker, and that is the thread we will continue to pull.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the isolated reality of the Russian state. To follow this story and all of our independent, unfiltered accountability reporting, you need to subscribe for free at impeach47.substack.com.
Yeah, check it out.
We are also breaking news continuously across social media, so follow us on X at impeach47, follow us on Threads at impeach.47, follow us on Instagram at impeach.47,
All the links are there.
and be sure to subscribe to our video reporting on YouTube at impeach47. Finally, if you value this kind of deep, unbought research, the way you support us is simple. Wear the movement.
Wear it.
Visit impeach47.earth for hats, shirts, and stickers. Every item you wear is a walking billboard that keeps this research fed and independent. Keep questioning the facade, and we will see you next time.